Hi, Elizabeth. And Peter, I just want to mention that Councillor Oosterhoff is going to be a little bit late.
Thanks, Councillor Doherty. We can hear that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to City Hall as well, for those of you that have never had a meeting here. We have Councillor Doherty on virtual. Just the first reminder, while I remind you now, the microphone that you've got will have a green light on it at present, and that green light, for some unknown reason, down at the base, means that it is off. So when you want to speak, you need to press the little button to the right of it, and then it goes red, and you can speak.
That one, okay.
Oh. Okay, so putting us on at 9:34, we have a quorum, we have regrets from Jelinka, and we have a resignation from Donald Mitchell, who has gone on to more education and therefore have resigned and was accepted as the resignation was accepted at council last night. The agenda, any changes to what is on the agenda? And if not, oh, sorry, Bridget, yes.
No, I just want to mention that Councillor Oosterhoff will be late, but he will be joining via Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much. We will watch for him to appear. The agenda, do we have additions to the agenda or a motion to approve the agenda as printed? Done, seconded by Jen, thank you very much. Any discussion there? And seeing none, those in favor of the agenda as printed, and those opposed, and that is carried. And the confirmation of the minutes of August 17. I have not heard of any changes on these. And seeing no movement then, looking for a mover to confirm the minutes as printed. Jane, thank you. Paul Bamfield. Any discussion there? Keep on having to remember to look at my screens as well. Seeing none, those in favour of approving the minutes as printed. Thank you very much. They are now official. Pecuniary interest, none known, and as ever, if it comes up, please speak out immediately. Just want to get rid of that. Delegations, briefings, business. I think then we get right the way down to stat business. And starting with 450 Princess Street, Part 4. Brian.
Nice to be back in Ontario Hall and Council Chamber. So the application that you're looking at today is at 450 Princess Street. It is on the south side of Princess, just west of Division Street. It contains the stone-clad Bell Telephone Building built in 1941. The property is designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act in 2017. Includes a number of attributes that are noted on the screen. The building was built in 1941 for the Bell Telephone Company. It was to provide a central facility for the switching apparatus from when they switched from the operator-assisted system in that time. The attributes of interest for us today is the modern classical style of the original portion of the building with its symmetrical placement of entry doors, window openings, and vertical oriented recessed bays. The foundation walls, clad in smooth stone and extended eastward to form a landscape wall and metal gate, and you can see that on the screen just to the bottom left. The use of the contrasting textures on this building, its limestone finishes of the original portion, including the rough face stone walls and the smooth stone trim, coins, spandrels, and foundation walls, and the visibility and legibility of those attributes from Princess Street. So the application today is under Section 33, Part 4 of the Act, to request approval to alter an existing vent. And you can see it in the bottom left of the image on the screen. The top image is existing and the bottom is proposed. And I will zoom in a little bit on my next slide here in a sec. The existing vent is 0.6 meters by 0.8 meters, or 23 inches by 32 inches. It's on the northeast corner of the building's foundation. Now, due to security concerns, the owners wish to relocate the vent to approximately 3.4 meters, or roughly 11 feet, above grade, using an existing metal box ductwork. The new ductwork is to run along the exterior of the wall, and be painted to match the cladding of the building, and affixed to the building in accordance with the masonry policy. The City of Kingston is fortunate to have such a wealth of built heritage resources. Our register includes some 1,400 entries, and a vast majority of those are 19th century limestone and brick buildings. There is, however, very few landmark mid-20th century buildings built in the modern classical style, like the Bell Building on our register. The Bell Building is a representative example of the modern classical style. It's a style that was sought to design a modern facility to be compatible in its architecture and materials with its surroundings. The use of limestone cladding wasn't intentional to reflect the predominant building material in Kingston, and may be unique among Bell buildings in Ontario. The two stone sculptures, the prominent entrance, the unique architecture, and the location close to the street adds to its landmark status in Kingston and makes this building an important contributor to the streetscape on Princess Street. The stone-clad foundation and walls, particularly those visible from Princess, are noted heritage attributes of this property. The federal standards and guidelines include specific guidance with respect to mechanical and electrical systems. That's guidelines 4.3.9 for those who are following along. They note that ensuring the least alterations possible to the building's exterior form and the least damage to the character-defining elements of the building. Placing new mechanical systems in existing non-character spaces rather than constructing new, installing in a manner that it does not damage or obscure character-defining elements, and installing the vertical runs of ductworks in character-defining spaces such as closets, service rooms, and wall cavities are all parts of that guideline from the standards and guidelines, and helps us to consider these types of changes. The plan submitted in your agenda package is Exhibit C of our report. Proposes to retain the existing vent opening in the foundation. It's to add a new elbow, a 1.6 meter or 6 foot long vertical extension, and a 0.8 or 2.5 foot tall louver vent on top, thereby changing the ground mounted existing structure to a wall mounted 0.6 by 0.8 meter box of ductwork venting type structure at approximately 11 feet in the air from grade. The new metal venting structure will have a profound negative impact on the primary facade and the most significant heritage attributes of this heritage resource, which is the stone-clad wall. Even painted in a matte gray tone, the 3.4 meter tall metal structure will not only conceal a considerable amount of the wall surface, but will also compete with the prominence of the main entrance, stone sculptures, and various other attributes of the building. The Bell Telephone Building is designed with clear horizontal and vertical datum lines of symmetrical windows and door arrangement, including uniform spandrel panels and base course and stone above the foundation. The proposed venting structure will appear as an anomaly on the face of this building as it disrupts this very intentional rhythm of architectural design and modern classical style. The creation of a large metal box venting along the primary elevation of this landmark building on Kingston's main commercial thoroughfare is, in staff's opinion, unacceptable. Staff, together with a couple of responding committee members, suggested a more desirable location would be on the side or rear of this building. Even a more permanent security fencing could be considered at an alternate side or rear location option. However, this was provided to the applicants as consideration, and they noted difficulty given interior equipment layout factors. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal will have an unacceptable negative impact on the heritage attributes of the Bell Building, namely the modern architectural style, contrasting textures in the limestone finishes and the foundation walls, and the smooth stone finish and their visibility and legibility from Princess Street. We did circulate this application. Building permit will be required for this. Planning has noted some hesitation with some zoning setback requirements that they need confirmation on, which will be addressed through building permit. And our engineering colleagues have requested that a temporary access permit be obtained to access this for the work, to do the work. This committee was consulted. Your comments are summarized in the agenda. Two responding members noted concerns with this visual impact and suggested alternative locations, which I spoke to. And so staff are recommending against this application, and our motion is before you, which is pretty straightforward. I do note, though, if committee is considering supporting it, we have drafted a series of conditions of approval that we would recommend be included in any amendment in that nature. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Committee members, questions, comments? Councillor Doherty?
I believe the main concern was security. So I just wonder if you discussed like a grill or some kind of security measures that could be used and keeping the same location, but just actually just creating a new system there that is more secure. I assume you discussed that, but I just wonder if you could share a little bit more about the discussion with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did discuss options with the owners. As you may be aware, they attempted some type of fencing around the property for some time, which appeared to have limited success. This was the option that they pushed for. They have talked about other things, but this was the one that they chose as their primary, most successful way of doing it. So it's what we have before us today, I'm afraid.
So metal grills or security like that, just literally around the box, was never really discussed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think in discussions I had with them that would serve their purposes. They are trying to discourage people from gathering on this little bit of grass on Princess Street completely. If you did see the fencing originally, it was blocking the entire frontage. I don't think, and this is just my opinion in discussing with them, that would have been successful to meet their needs. They want people completely removed from this area, and they figure if they move the heat source that people congregate around, that it would discourage people from spending time there.
Right. Thanks for that explanation.
Okay, thank you. I just acknowledge that Councillor Oosthoff is now present virtually and has a hand up. Councillor Oosthoff.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry I was late. Mr. Chair, thank you. Question I had, and maybe I just missed it here. I'm sorry, I got a couple of calls coming in. The question I had was, I did read on this file, and I do understand the concern. What I wasn't clear on, I suppose, was whether an alternate option is actually possible. Like, is that what has been determined? I mean, they have engineers. I mean, if they're, is it possible, or is it not going to happen? Or, you know, again, there has to be consideration for the possible, right? And so, how much difficulty, or is the project not possible if they can't come out the front? So what have we given them for options, and is that in the realm of possibility as a contractor?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have gone back and forth with the owners trying to find an alternative route. They have, as noted in their report, the best suggestion would be to move this vent to the side of the building and screen it, block it, fence it, whatever they need to do. They have basically dismissed that as not an option for their needs. They wouldn't disclose specifically why that was, but this is the approach that they have pushed for, and it's why it's before you as is today, is it's the only option that they are willing to investigate.
Right, so that's a problem. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think it's a great. I understand the position, but what's going to happen next, I don't know. So, I just don't know where we go when we're putting up a block like that creates a no possibility almost. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes, but I don't know what to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer?
Hey, so I mean, I can understand if they have sort of stuff in the interior that can't be moved, but also like sometimes you get like a foundation that, say if this is stone and it's improperly, like if it needs a lot of work to put a hole into to move the ductwork. But I'm wondering actually if they could, and if this doesn't go through, if you discuss with them, moving, if you look at the picture of the facade, if they bring it up, there's like a short horizontal run and then the vertical run. If they could take the horizontal run and at least put that on the exterior around to the other side, and then maybe you could landscape in front of that horizontal run, hide it, and then you'd have the exhaust on the side of the building. So the actual vertical element, move that around to the other side as a possible solution. That makes sense.
Thank you. Actually, I'm gonna comment if I may. Thank you, and through you. I think the challenge before us today is we can contemplate many alternate solutions to the challenge of where this vent might go that would be more appropriate for the heritage of the building. Unfortunately, the applicant wasn't willing to contemplate those options with us. And so as such, I guess I'm just putting on the table that staff are really in a difficult position to represent the challenges that the applicant has experienced when they actually haven't been disclosed to us. So I do acknowledge yourself and as well, Councillor Oosterhoff, it is a difficult position. It's a difficult position for staff to bring forward a negative recommendation where we don't support the applicant and we don't have options. But that's really where we're at. And so I think there are many possible alternate outcomes, but until we have an applicant who's willing to discuss those potentials or at least justify why they're not possible, it's very challenging for staff to speak to committee with any sense of authority on what is the actual barrier here.
Okay, thank you. Further questions, comments? Don Taylor?
Yes, I was also very doubtful about this application. On the one hand, I'm sure it is possible to find another route or location for this vent from the inside. I mean, it's always possible. Yes, it may be more expensive, but sometimes one has to do things properly. The other concern is that there seems to be an assumption that if this, vent is sort of expanded and moved, that this area will no longer be attractive to the homeless people that like to congregate there. And I'm not very knowledgeable about the situation, but I imagine there's a pleasant, rather large grassy area that is comfortable and not too close to the street. They like that, and they like the warmth that comes from this vent. If the duct is extended upwards, there will still be some warmth there. So to me, it's very possible that if this installation were approved, it wouldn't really solve the problem that the Bell people are concerned with. So I think denying it is the right thing to do and look for a better solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Paul Banfield?
Really just a comment, I guess. I can't get past this issue of security. Have they had issues before? I mean, what are the, what is it? Are they afraid that somebody's going to rip the outer cover off and crawl through whatever's on the other side into the building? And as you've already stated, it sounds like they're not giving any feedback on any of this. And until, for me anyway, until they come back with some better reasons why security is an issue, I certainly can't support anything like this.
Okay, thank you. Does the agent want to comment at all? No? Okay, other? Okay, well, with that, please note this is a negative motion. It's a denied. So when you're voting in favor, you are denying the application, which is the opposite from what we usually do. With nobody else wanting to speak, put the motion on the floor, looking for a mover as it is printed. Jennifer Demeter, seconded. Done. Thank you. Further discussion of the motion on the floor? Seeing none then, voting in favor to deny the application and voting against denying. And that motion carries then. Thank you very much. Move on to 216 Ontario Street. Ryan again? I believe we're treating this as a part 5. Part of it is a part 4, but it's easier to do the whole thing as part 5.
This is a bit of a weird one, Mr. Chair, and I'll walk you through it as best I can here. So, I mean, you're all familiar with this property, I'm sure. This is Kingston City Hall. 216 Ontario Street, Kingston City Hall. You're all familiar. What we're looking at today is the market wing door, the very rear door of City Hall that juts out into the Springer Market Square area. So this property is a National Historic Site of Canada. It was registered in 1961. It is part of the Market Square Heritage Conservation District, a rather vital part of the square. It also was designated in 1975, probably one of the first in Ontario. It had an amendment in 76 and another amendment in 2010. The 2010 amendment included a number of interior features, which I'll speak to in a second. The attributes are plentiful, as you can imagine, on this property. Some of the key exterior attributes include its monumental scale, symmetrical plan with the side wings projecting end pavilions and rear wing projecting from the center. Its exterior detailing, including the windows, doors, and symmetrical arrangement. The rear wing, as it was rebuilt in 1865. And further exterior detailing, including string course, pilasters, parapets, and dentile cornice. Interior features include the plasterwork throughout, the wall surfacing and coverings, original and reconstructed woodwork, doors, and casings. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty more, but those are what is relevant today. So the application that we're looking at today has to do with this market wing door and upgrades to it to provide additional barrier-free access to City Hall. Now, just a heads up to the committee, a temporary ramp structure will be installed at this entrance in the coming month or so, simply to allow continual barrier-free access into this building while the ramp into this side entrance is being repaired. And once that works are complete, that wood structure will be removed, and what we're looking at today will be moved forward. So what is proposed on the market wing entrance through this application is both exterior and interior interventions. Now, as you're aware, Part 5 designations only apply to exterior attributes of the property, while Part 4 designations can include both interior and exterior attributes. Approvals for exterior processes for changes to attributes that are designated both 4 and 5 are subject to the Part 5 process. Proposed changes to interior features that are designated Part 4 are subject to the Part 4 process only. So as a result, this application will require approval under both Section 33, which is Part 4, and 42, which is Part 5. And staff have prepared separate motions, which I'll walk you through after I get through the alterations here. So what we're looking at, for the Part 4 part of it, Section 33 approval is requested to remove and put in storage the interior vestibule doors, a set of double doors, and to repair the existing flooring, including concrete repairs and the installation of new tile in place of the existing plywood. New wireless power door operators are to be installed in the interior to operate the exterior doors and the interior door. So that's here, you can see some of the work to the vestibule, the repairs to the floor, the vestibule doors, and the like. With respect to the exterior changes, these are approved or reviewed through Section 42, Part 5. They're looking to shorten the length of the existing exterior door by approximately 15 centimeters or 6 inches to allow it to be level with the floor, and to install mechanical operators for the doors, wall-mounted power door operators and plates on the exterior face of the building. The existing grade, which I think you can see better here, is to be altered to provide a gentle slope up to the new sloped access from the existing grade of the square. Now, there are two options proposed. Sorry, I skipped the part. So to avoid a hazard at the top of the grade, a 60 centimeter limestone wall is proposed and capped to divide the new slope access to the grade of the square. And two options for its cladding are proposed. Option one is to reclaim the limestone that was taken from the recent work on the south and north exterior staircases on Ontario Street, and additional limestone is needed. And option two is the use of a manufactured concrete modular block product in a weathered gray tone that closely resembles limestone. Plans were provided by Roni Engineering and are included in your agenda package. In terms of our review, Kingston City Hall has considerable cultural heritage value both nationally and locally, and is a key part of the Market Square District. Staff have reviewed the application together with the description of the heritage value in the designation bylaws, the statement of value in the HCD plan, and the National Significance Statement of Commemoration. Staff and members of this committee attended the site in August with the team from our facilities and Mr. Roney. The original market wing, which once extended to King Street, suffered a significant fire in 1865 and was rebuilt and to a lesser scale. After the rebuilding, 3 large wooden doors were originally installed to that end. Those current doors and vestibule and flanking sash windows were added in 1951 to accommodate the Kingston Police Force, who used the space until 1972. The rear entrance of Market Ring, of course, was never designed to accommodate mobility-assisted devices, such as wheelchairs. City's facility staffs, together with Roni Engineering, designed a gentle slope, not a ramp, into the existing landscape to eliminate the 11-inch step difference from the building down to the grade of the square. The existing grade will be altered, and the existing paved landscaping stones will be reused where possible to create a gentle slope towards the north and south from the entrance to the square. To avoid the hazard at the top of the square, a 60 centimeter tall stone wall is to direct users down the slope will be installed. The short wall will be constructed of either salvaged stone from the recently constructed north and south wing staircases, or alternatively a Canadian-made concrete modular block product. Now, while staff support both options, our preference, of course, is the use of the salvaged limestone from the front staircases. The use of the limestone is both an effective reuse of historic material that originally used on this very building that would otherwise be kept in storage, and as the iconic building material of the City of Kingston on its iconic landmark building. The existing double doors, the interior, will need to be shortened to bring them level. The interior vestibule doors are proposed to be removed and stored. Now, while both sets of doors are not original to the reconstruction of this wing in 1865, their solid wood construction and period-appropriate design make them a heritage feature of their own right. And while staff can support the removal of the interior doors, if space is required for functionality purposes, if, however, there is an opportunity to retain the existing vestibule doors in situ, perhaps in a fixed open position, we would encourage and recommend this as the best option. The rear wing entrance of City Hall is one of the most visible, yet seldom used features of this National Historic Site. Every effort should be made to welcome all people into this iconic building. The concept plans proposed will conserve the design scale and materiality of this prominent feature while improving the access for those with mobility devices. Staff will recommend approval of this application. So we did circulate this application internally. Engineering and our colleagues from Utilities Kingston remind the proponents that there are underground services or possibly in this area that need to be identified. Environment has a comment about the management of excessive soils on site. And committee reviewed this application, comments were provided and summarized in your agenda, and there were no significant concerns noted. So, Mr. Chair, just to quickly remind this committee, there are 2 parts to this motion. The first is committee's recommendation to council for the interior changes, which are the Part 4 process. And the second part of the motion are the exterior changes, which are would be committee's support of staff's recommendation to council in terms of the changes to those outside of the building, the exterior part of the building, through the Part 5 process. So I hope that was clearer than it sounded in my head, and we're happy to answer questions as needed.
Thank you very much for that. Members, can you confirm that your dash comments have been correctly reported? And seeing nothing negative, thank you. Members of the public wishing to make comments? And we don't have any watching there, okay. Committee members, questions, comments, thoughts? Oh, yes, Jane.
I'm hoping someone can explain why the interior doors have to be removed.
Mr. Chair, if I could, my colleagues from facilities are here, and perhaps this is an opportunity for them to introduce themselves and answer this question for the member.
Good, thank you.
Hello, thanks for your question. I'm Katie Brennan. I'm from Facilities Construction. So we decided to remove those interior doors essentially for the most accessibility possible. We didn't want the propped open doors to stop people, and it's also easier to clean the area. If requested, we could definitely look at permanently keeping those interior doors open. We just thought it was a better solution, but we're open to your suggestions.
Sounds great. I would really support keeping those doors even if they're permanently open because they are part of the fabric, right? My next question is about the exterior doors. And I guess I have a concern about removing a portion of a heritage concern about removing, especially 6 inches seems a lot. So my question is, I guess about how, when you take a piece off the bottom of a door, it affects the whole proportions of the door. And I'm just concerned about if you've thought about that and how that might be handled. The other question is, from a carpentry point of view, would you consider removing and saving those 6 inches? I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is. And if you ever wanted to put it back the way it was, for instance, in future, if that wasn't going to be the entrance, the accessible entrance, then you could actually glue them back on because you'd have the pieces that really fit. So it's all about proportion, if you've looked at that, and also about whether or not you could keep the piece, because 6 inches is a lot. You know, I've repaired doors that you add an inch to the bottom and it's almost seamless, so that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
Thank you. Jeff Rump, I'm the manager of construction. The grade will be raised up. So proportionally, I'm also an architect, proportionally, the grade will reach the bottom of the door after we remove that small portion at the bottom. So you won't actually notice that there's a difference between the two because the grade is going to be raised up so it's flush with the interior. So a wheelchair could just come up the ramp, open the door, and then transfer right inside without any threshold or any bump of any kind. But we would certainly save the piece that is removed. It's also my understanding that the doors were refreshed or replaced in the 70s. And again, yeah. And we'd actually be removing a piece that is deteriorating pretty badly at the moment. But proportionally, when you look at it from a distance, it will be a flush line with the grade at the top of the ramp. There won't be any gap or anything like that.
If I could just add to that, thank you, and I'm sorry to, and through you, Mr. Chair. Our understanding is the doors were first replaced in 1951, and then there may have been subsequent repairs in the 70s. The repairs to the building in the 70s are not as well documented as we might have hoped they could be. So, you know, the opportunity to save a portion of that door, I think, is a fair consideration, but we also have to, you know, understand as well the doors are from the 50s. Themselves. And I would just also add to that, I know when the file came in and we were having discussions about proportions, we did explore other ways of trying to trim that door and having it work in that opening. The approach proposed actually aligns the window elements, so the lights align to the adjacent windows. So that connection was really what we were trying to preserve, understanding that, cutting a door down is a thing, for sure, that is a challenge in the future if we wanted to go back.
Great, thanks for that information, that's really helpful. And my last thing is I would support using the retained limestone as opposed to the other proposal. Great.
Good, thank you. Thank you for those answers. Further questions from people virtually or here? And seeing none. Committee members, any final comments? So the motion then is, can we get it on the screen? No, okay. It's the long one. It's in two parts. I'm not going to read it. Firstly, that the interior works be approved, and the second part is that the exterior works. The interior, oh, thank you. The interior has 3 conditions. The exterior has 6. And we're ready to vote, I believe. Those in favor of the motion as sorry. Oh, sorry, I need a mover and a seconder. I did all that talking, it didn't stop. Moved by Paul Bamfield, seconded, I saw Bridget's hand first. Thank you very much, Councillor Doherty. So moved by Paul Bamfield, seconded by Councillor Doherty. The recommendation as printed in the agenda. Those in favor? And those opposed? And we are not hearing anything virtually, so that carries. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for... I was going to comment that we should take 3 inches off the top and the bottom, but that then puts the windows out of line with the side panel, so that doesn't help either. Okay, we move on to 7 George Street, which is Philip. Yes, Philip.
That's right. Through you, Mr. Chair. My apologies, everyone, if I'm a little bit rusty. It's the first time I'm public speaking in about 2 years. So, yeah. So this is an application proposal or an alteration proposal for 7 George Street, where the applicant is seeking to install a new metal roofing system on both the garage and the home, but the garage will be done first and the home at a later date. So the subject property with the municipal address of 7 George Street is located mid-block between Wellington Street and Regent Street and helps form the outer edge of the Berryfield Village. So the property at 7 George Street is a 1.5-story vernacular style frame heritage building that is visible from Highway 15 in the right conditions and at the intersection of Wellington and George Street. Currently, the property is in the process of renovating their garage in accordance with a previous permit approved by this committee. So the property has the following relevant attributes related to this application. It is constructed by local builders William and Frederick Allen in a vernacular style. The main building has a cross-gable roof, 2-bay facade, and narrow horizontal cladding, and the property is located close to the street and is oriented towards George Street. Importantly, the garage has no identified heritage value at this time. So as we can see in the image here on the slide, we have the initial proposal, which was actually submitted with this application, which is the Ultra Vic style, and then we have the Regency style on the right, which I'll discuss in just a moment. So the applicant seeks to replace the existing asphalt roof on the detached garage and principal building with exposed fastener metal roofing from the Ultra Vic, the Vic West line in the gray and charcoal color. However, since the report's finalization, the applicant has also proposed a different and arguably more sympathetic metal roofing system, which is shown on the right, also known over there as the newly proposed, actually it's on the left, which is an option that is closer to a traditional standing seam metal roof than the original roofing material initially proposed. It is expected that the garage will be roofed first, but once the asphalt shingles are in need of repair on the main building, which is estimated to be in a few years, the house too will have the same roofing system, so there will be consistency between both buildings. Overall, the addition of a new gray/charcoal metal roof on a 1 and 1.5 story building and related garage should fit comfortably within the district, should not detract from the visual enjoyments as appreciation of historic street views, and should not impact the rural village character. And on a final note, I want to note that when seen from potentially Highway 15 or when entering the district, it should also be an appropriate type of roofing system, especially in the updated design that is proposed accordingly. As we can see here, this is the recommendation before you, and I wanted to highlight the following. Oh, my apologies for that. So staff considers the Regency line proposed to be by the applicant to be a suitable candidate under condition 5 of this approval, which is minor deviations. And further, staff will be provided with the roofing color for the final approval and the garage roof along with the main house to confirm they both have the same style, color, and material for consistency between both buildings. Thank you.
Can members confirm their dash comments are correctly recorded? And seeing no concerns, members of the public, which we don't have any online, do we? Committee members, questions? Jennifer.
I was just wondering why the same color for both. I think that depending on the color palette of, if they were different, I mean, I understand if they're both the garage and the house are the same color palette to have the same, but I think that you can have different colors. So I guess I would just wonder about taking that out or whether it was necessary. I do agree with the same style and material, but anyway.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That is a good point, and there's nothing necessarily that directly states that that can't be accomplished in the district plan. However, when I was looking over the new construction policies, this is not new construction, by the way, but when it is noted, it makes a point that garages shall be made of like or complementary material of the principal structure. Material, of course, not color, but the idea being that there's a clear want for consistency between accessory buildings and the main building on the property. So that's why this decision was made by the applicant and is being supported as such, but your point is well taken for sure. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to go back one step. The applicant is online. We're still working with different technology here today, and I believe he'd like to make a comment under the previous set of questions. So, can you bring him in?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Great. Thank you for taking my comment. So yes, we are the applicants. We are the owners of 7 George Street. Both myself, Gerhard Pratt, and my wife are here. I just wanted to add a couple of comments. First of all, thank you very much. Heritage Services have been very helpful in this application. I just wanted to point out that we feel heritage is quite important. It's important to us as well, and we've just invested about $25,000 in completely stripping the original wood siding on the main house, repainting with linseed oil paint, and the studio that we're constructing will benefit from the same treatment. And given the attention we paid to the exterior finish, it seemed appropriate to consider the rather unpleasant non-heritage asphalt shingles as well, and both for the studio under construction and for the main house. So when we made the application, we proposed the cheapest option, and 2 committee members made comments along the lines that the span between the ribs it would be more in keeping with heritage versions of the roof if the span were larger and so to speak flatter, and so we did consider that, and that's why we've kind of proposed a new system, the Regency system, which is a little bit flatter in that sense. I just wanted to give you an idea that this is going to be an expensive proposition compared with our original estimate of about $4,500 for the 2 roofs. It's going to go up to about $8,000. And the next line above this, which is indeed flatter still, is much more expensive, and it would bring us up to about $13,500 just for materials. So we're going to bulk, I think, if we get told we have to do that, and in which case we would be left with the original asphalt roof proposal, which would be unfortunate. So I just want to say that, and thank you very much for considering our proposal.
Thank you very much for being with us today as well. Other questions, other comments? Don?
Yes, I'm pleased with the change in the proposed roofing. I certainly think it's an improvement, but I still a little would have preferred a roof paneling that is absolutely flat between the seams. And I was a little puzzled that when I looked on the manufacturer's website, I didn't see that option. So I don't know whether it's not there or not. But this is sort of a question for staff. I noticed the, excuse me, the roofing on 85 Sydenham was recently changed, and it has, as far as I can tell, a flat pan between the seams. And, you know, I think if that's available and reasonably priced, that would be my preference. But I'm quite comfortable with going with the proposed roofing. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Philip?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's certainly some information we can definitely connect with the applicant here, because depending on the situation, we do have some flexibility built into this proposal, and that potentially that could be something considered. Of course, cost is a major concern for the applicant, but it's definitely something we can connect them with to let them know it's certainly an option. So thank you for bringing that to our attention there, Don. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Jennifer?
I just wanted to thank the applicants, and really, I think it's commendable that you guys reused the wood siding, and especially with the linseed oil paint, that's really in keeping with sort of heritage restoration. I'm completely fine with the Regency profiling. I actually, as an architect, usually spec a hidden fastener roofing system versus something with exposed, because it's better protects the sort of penetrations that you're putting through. So in terms of spending the extra money, I think it's actually going to be helpful and good for the clients to have picked this profile. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. Others? No? Okay. Last comments? Otherwise, I look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, which has 5 conditions. Jane, moving. Don, seconding. Discussion. And seeing none, I'll ask you to vote those in favor and those opposed. And that carries. Always have these delays to see what's going to happen on the screens here. So thank you, Philip, for that. Thank you, applicants, for being with us. And I believe, Philip, we stay with you and go on to 32 Bagot Street.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Hello again, everyone. So this is an alteration proposal for 32 Bagot Street, which is meant to support a baseball tournament that is occurring in 2024. Before I begin, I want to quickly go over the timeline for the works that are proposed for this alteration here. So in fall 2022, so just upcoming right around now, Parks and Recreation is going to be releasing the tender to find a contractor to do these works as described. In 2023 to 2024, it's expected construction of the ball diamond will continue and to continue to finalization for the August 2024 tournament. However, the area will likely remain offline until the tournament. Importantly, the 2022 to 2023 timeline is just their best guess at this moment because they still are trying to find the appropriate contractor. And it is assumed that they want to have grass to be grown when actually fencing off the area, which is one of the reasons why it will remain fenced off until the tournament in August 2024. And as we'll mention further, or as I'll mention later on in the proposal, in the presentation here, that a lot of the works that are going to be proposed are temporary in nature, just to support the tournament, and will be removed soon after. So 32 Bagot Street, locally known as the Cricket Field, is located directly south of the Frontenac County Courthouse and is in the north part of City Park, as well as abuts Bagot, Court, West, and Berry Streets. The property is an open, tree-lined park space that currently supports a baseball and softball diamond, as well as 3 walking paths, 2 informal and 1 paved. Importantly, the baseball diamond is the only park facility that is being altered in this proposal. So the cultural attributes most relevant to this application include: in 1852, this park was converted, or this area was converted into a public park at the request of John Counter. In 1853, the site of the courthouse was created with this location on the hill, which overlooks and continues to overlook the open land area, that is, including the cricket field. And by 1873, the area between Court and Bagot Street were used for organized baseball games. And a fundamental heritage importance is this continued use as a public park since 1852. So first I'm going to go over how the field is changing, and in subsequent slides I will discuss some of the structures that are being proposed. So the proposal seeks to do the following alterations to the field related to the baseball diamond. So they're going to relocate the baseball diamond approximately 30 meters southwest, grade the baseball diamond in the outfield, install an asphalt pathway to connect the diamond to the existing paved pathway and sidewalk at Bagot Street, install a warning track made of clay to demarcate the perimeter of the field/outfield, and the outfield portion is to be removed post-tournament, and to install a home and pitching plate, as one would for a baseball diamond. So now we're going to be discussing the structures necessary to support the renovated baseball diamond. Importantly, the existing fencing and other structures related to this existing diamond will be removed. The proposal seeks to replace the existing backstop with a new backstop, which will have galvanized posts and chain link fencing. Install 2 foul posts. Install 2 covered dugouts in concrete. Dugouts will have a powder coat finish, with the final color to be determined by staff, along with staff. And installation of 2 bullpens, associated catcher's area, will be 1 on each side of the baseball infield. And there will be replaced, like for like, 2 aluminum sports field bleachers. Each bleacher will have approximately 30-person capacity in each one. Further, they will install a galvanized chain link fence around the infield at approximately 1.8 meters tall. And finally, they will install a temporary tournament fencing and gates in galvanized steel around the outfield at approximately 1.2 meters tall, to which the outfield portion will be removed post-tournament. So the subject application is supported by staff and seems to fulfill the goals of the Heritage Conservation District Plan and standards and guidelines, as the proposal seeks to enhance the baseball diamond's ability to support formal active recreational uses, will not impact informal usability or existing historic tree layouts, and will maintain the views of the surrounding area while not overshadowing the Frontenac County Courthouse's dominance over the cricket field. The future grading plan should not impact the hilly topography that helps establish the Frontenac Courthouse's dominance over the field, and the proposed renovations to the baseball diamond could have limited view impacts due to the installation of additional fencing, backstop, and galvanized steel topped with colored piping. However, this is very similar to what is existing currently, and the bench covering and dugout will also have to do have to have careful consideration with staff input, which is a condition of approval. The baseball diamond upgrade supports the concept of a public park with its related recreational uses, which is a traditional practice/use from 1852 and in the 70s for baseball specifically, and it is a proposed update will reinforce the park's history as an area for active youth recreation for years to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. Members, can you confirm your dash comments? And seeing no concerns there, we have no members of the public still, I don't believe. Committee members, questions? Wow, very good. Last chance. Final comments? Look down to a mover and a seconder. You have a recommendation with 12 parts and then 7 conditions on it. Looking for a mover as printed. Paul, thank you very much. And a seconder. Don, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Nothing here. Seeing none then, asking those in favor to vote. And those opposed. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to the designations proposed. Is that Ryan? Yes, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just get this up here for you. So this application is not a heritage permit. This application is a series of potential new Part 4 designations to be added to the register. There are 6 here before us, and the report outlines some of the background and process, which I'll walk you through quickly. As you know, Section 29 of the Heritage Act allows council to enact bylaws to designate real property, including all the buildings and structures thereon, to be of cultural heritage value or interest, and council is required, before giving notice of its intention to designate, to consult with the Heritage Committee, you guys. So just to quickly walk you through the new appeal process, this is a seriously condensed and super simple version of the elaborate spreadsheet that the province has given us, but this is the best case scenario, and I just wanted to walk you through it because it is a little strange, but just so we're all on the same page. So we did speak to this a little further in 2021 when the new Heritage Act was updated. So the details are in that report if you're interested, but just quickly, there is a new 2-tier appeal process for designations. So following consultation with the Heritage Committee today, council can choose to serve a notice of intention to designate the property under Section 29 of the Act onto the property owners and the Ontario Heritage Trust. An ad is also published in the newspaper. Within 30 days, so after that's published, the public have 30 days to issue a notice of objection to the city clerk's office. That notice of objection, if received, will be sent to city council for consideration. Council has 90 days to decide how it wishes to handle that objection. They can either issue a notice of passing and give final reading to the designation bylaw, or they can issue a notice of withdrawal of their intention to designate. The decision, if they are to proceed with the notice of passing, then triggers the second appeal period process, and that anyone would, regardless if there was an objection or not, can then appeal within 30 days of that notice to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The tribunal will review the appeal and hold hearing and render a binding decision on the fate of and content of the destination bylaw. So that's the process in general. And just quickly as a reminder as well, when we're looking at new designations, the properties that are being considered must meet one or more of the criteria for determining cultural heritage value, which is found in Ontario Regulation 9/06 at the end of the Heritage Act. The criteria include, the broad categories are design or physical value, and those are if the property is a rare, unique, or representative or early example of a style, type, expression, material, or construction method. If the property displays a high degree of craftsmanship, artistic merit, or technical or scientific achievement. The second criteria is historical associative value. So if the property has direct association with a theme, event, belief, person, activity, organization, or institution, or demonstrates the work of an architect, artist, builder, designer, or theorist that are significant to the community, or has the potential to yield information that contributes to an understanding of a community or culture. And finally, contextual value is if the property is important in defining, maintaining, or supporting the character of an area, is physically, functionally, visually, or historically linked to its surroundings, or is a landmark. So those are what we would assess these properties on. So we'll get to the fun part here. The properties that we have before us are 6. And the first one here is the Robert Rose Farmstead at 3448 Creekford Road. It's on the north side of Creekford Road, just east of Westbrook Road. Its value is contained in as a good example of a mid-19th century Ontario vernacular limestone house and period wood barn with limestone foundation. The property contributes to and helps to maintain and support the historic character of Creekford Road. This property you may recognize. Surprisingly, it is not in the old Sydenham district. It is right across the street from the central branch of the library, the old Bishop's House, which is in the district. But this property is on the corner of Johnson and Bagot. It's the Mahood House at 131 Johnson. It's on the north side. It has cultural heritage value as an outstanding example of a Queen Anne revival house from the first decade of the 1900s. The Mahood House has historic association with the Mahood family, who were prominent local merchants who built and lived in this house for multiple generations. The building was designed by well-known local architect William Newlands, whose work also includes the Kingston and Pembroke and Grand Trunk Railway stations on Ontario Street, numerous institutional, commercial, and residential buildings across the city. With its dramatic style, its prominent location, the property is considered a landmark and helps contribute to the historical integrity of this streetscape. This is 3536 Princess, the Leonard Carriage shop in Westbrook. It's on the north side of the street. Its value is in its unusual example of a mid-19th century 2-story limestone building with mansard roof and dormers. The Leonard Carriage shop is historically associated with Nathaniel Leonard, a local carriage maker and contractor who built the house and operated his business from it. The property is important in maintaining the historic character and integrity of Westbrook. And just down the street from it is the Marshall Farmhouse at 3606 Princess, also on the north side of the street in Westbrook. It is an excellent example of a mid-19th century Ontario vernacular limestone farmhouse. The Marshall Farmhouse is associated with William Marshall, who was the local justice of the peace, and a key member of the community who is credited with suggesting the name Westbrook for the village, and with his son Francis, who was a local farmer and apiist. The farmhouse was built by well-known local builders Hugh and William Saul, and its fine masonry works makes it a landmark and an important part of the historic streetscape of Westbrook. The Horning House at 1212 Woodbine is on the north side of Woodbine, east of Collinsbury Road this time, and it is currently part of the Kingston Christian School. It has cultural heritage value as a good example of a mid-19th century Ontario vernacular stone farmhouse. The attributes include the 1.5-story farmhouse with central entrance and regular fenestration, but not the modern school addition to this building. The property is important in maintaining the historic rural character of Woodbine Road, which is largely lost in this area. And finally, and certainly not least, is the Daniel Grass Frame Farmhouse on 1332 Woodbine Road. It is too on the north side of the road, this time west of Collinsbury Road. It has cultural heritage value as a good example of a mid-19th century Ontario vernacular frame farmhouse. The Grass Farmhouse is associated with the Grass family, who were an early United Empire Loyalist settling family in Kingston Township, who built the house, farmed the land for many years before moving to a newer, grander stone house, which is designated under Part 4 across the street south of this property. The property, so this is their humble beginnings. The property is important in maintaining the historic character of this streetscape. Now, the full bylaws are attached to your our report attached to your agenda as a number of exhibits B through H. The Heritage Property Working Groups have reviewed these draft bylaws and associated consultant reports and support the designation. Property owners, of course, are not required to support these designations. However, with the exception of the owner of the Leonard Carriage Shop, all owners have confirmed receipt of the letters and provided feedback, which we have considered in our drafting of the bylaws. The Carriage Shop, despite multiple attempts of mailing, tracking down owners, and even to banging on the door, we've been unable to make connection with them. However, staff recommend proceeding at this point with the designation and serving notice of intention to designate these properties. Exhibit A in our report is the notice of intention to designate. It's the ad that goes in the newspaper. It's also the letter that goes to the owners in the trust. And it is our recommendation that the notice be served by the clerk and under section 29, and should no objection be received, that council approve the designation bylaws and we serve a notice of passing. So this is so the recommendation here, Mr. Chair, is rather lengthy, as each property has two parts to its designation. So I believe this goes on to 3 pages. But we're happy to answer questions at your leisure. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Questions from members of the committee? Jennifer?
I'm just wondering about the process. I haven't taken part in it, but for the Creekford Road project, like I understand that the other ones all have sort of this other context of having a family.
Sorry, could you be a bit closer to the microphone?
Sorry.
Much better.
I was just wondering about the Creekford Road project. I noticed all the other ones had a sort of associated history to it, whether it's a person or such, it seems, or use, whereas the Creekford one just seems to have a good example of the vernacular stone house. So I guess I was wondering why that one got designated. Just general question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I dig out the specific little write-up on that Creekford Road property, which I think is the Robert Rose house, the designation is only as good as the research, I'm afraid, and the research is only as good as the information that's available. These rural properties are a little more challenging to dig up history on, and this one was one that our consultant reviewed a number of years ago, and there was not, I don't believe, a great deal of associative value found. So that's why it's lacking in that area. But the Heritage Act only requires one of those 3 main categories to be met, and this one meets at least 2 of them. So it wasn't included because it wasn't available, I guess, essentially. This one is an interesting farmhouse. It was built in the mid-19th century, so in the 1800s. It is a limestone farmhouse with an interesting barn behind it that is also a period barn. So it checks a number of the boxes, and we're supportive of it.
Other questions, comments? Don?
I have a concern about in all 5 of the 6 properties, there's a reference to non-heritage attributes, and that they include all the interior features. This is something new. We haven't seen this before. The working group has not had a chance to consider this, and I think it does need some discussion. I am going to, or planning to bring an amendment relating to those interior features, but Mr. Chair, should I wait until there's a motion on the floor?
Sorry, I wouldn't mind hearing just from Councillor Oosterhoff, who has a hand up as well, and then we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay, so Councillor Oosterhoff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe it's along the same lines of questions as Don. A couple of these places, or maybe all of them, have had significant work done to them, you know, prior to designation. How do you pick up? You know, we're fairly hard on, I think, I'll say it hard, we're fairly rigid on people who people or owners who, you know, have the privilege of having heritage properties. But now we are taking on something that is already accomplished, what they're, you know, to make the houses livable. So how do we manage that as, you know, heritage, I'm just curious about that. Is that where Don was going as well?
Ryan, do you want to comment on that, please?
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair, and through you, we have to treat these on a go-forward basis. Yes, these properties have existed for 100-some years, and there's been multiple changes to multiple features and parts of the building. I think that all goes into our analysis of these properties, if they still contain enough heritage value to protect them, to conserve them through this tool in the Heritage Act. So that's part of the consideration. And then I think going forward, as more changes happen, as these buildings evolve, then it gives committee, staff, and council a chance to have an input and say into that, so that we can recommend best practices going forward. And certainly the inclusion of non-attributes is a way of making it clear in the future when we are administrating these, that those are later changes and have really no value from a cultural heritage perspective. So it's a new option that we're testing out with this and the previous bunch. So yeah, I hope that answers the member's question.
So, Ryan, just to make that clear, if we look at page 121, at the end of the Schedule A on the Robert Rolls Farmstead, you have elements that do not contribute. And what you've listed there are, as Councillor Hustov says, improvements, modern improvements, et cetera, which you are not considering as part of a heritage attribute. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, okay, Mr. Chair, if you're looking at the Rose Farmhouse, it's the glazed breezeway, and that has an extensive second-story glazed breezeway that has no heritage value. The rounded concrete front porch, which looks to be a 1950s add-on, which, you know, honestly is rather inappropriate, but again, not an attribute. And then the pool and fence. So that future me, future us, when we're reviewing these for need for a heritage approval, if the owners want to make changes to those pools and fence, we can clearly say those aren't attributes. But if those changes have the ability to impact, or I guess the wording in the act is likely to affect, is what the Heritage Act says, then we have the ability to come back with a heritage approval, the need for a heritage approval. So it just helps the owners, for one thing, because the owners, one of the first questions I get from most of these owners is, what changes can I do without needing prior approval? Or I just added this feature to my building, it's not heritage. And we say, yes, you're right, it's not heritage. We will clearly note that for you, so that they're content and satisfied that we're not going to make a big stink out of something that they added 20 years ago. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments, and then I'll go back to Don. Okay, Don, you have wanted to speak again.
Well, certainly I'm very pleased that these designations are coming forward, and they're all very worthwhile properties that should be protected. I also appreciate that Ryan has done a lot of work persuading owners to accept designation. And I also understand that the recent changes in the Ontario Heritage Act have required some changes, and changes in the reasons for designation. And the working group hasn't met for quite a long period. We're meeting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, but certainly as a member of that working group, I'm okay with some of the changes that, rather minor changes. And one of the changes is a list that we haven't seen before, is a list of features that are not heritage attributes. And I think that's useful. I don't have any problem with that. It's helpful to the owners, helpful to staff in future discussions and so on. However, what I do have trouble with is the including all interior features in the list of non-cultural heritage attributes. Traditionally, these designations have not included interior attributes, with a few exceptions, such as major buildings such as City Hall. And obviously, if you look around, you realize that the interior features of this building have tremendous heritage value. And things like churches and prominent private buildings may include a list of interior features that really should be protected. But our practice has not been to include normally interior features. And I think we understand that the Ontario Heritage Act has a priority of protecting the view of the property, the exterior view, the public view of the property. And so that's their priority. That doesn't mean that these interior attributes are not important. In fact, that's where a lot of the heritage character and craftsmanship really shows up. So I think we really it would be good if the city and the committee can encourage the protection of interior attributes as well. So my concern is that putting into this list of attributes with no heritage value, the interior attributes, is really sending the wrong signal to owners and to the community. It's basically saying that we don't care what you do with the interior attributes. They're not important, but they are important. And I think it's wrong to send that kind of message. It's also unnecessary, because if the designation bylaw doesn't mention the interior features, they have no protection. The owner can do what they like. So there's no need to include a specific statement that the interior attributes are not heritage attributes. So I'm going to move an amendment, which I've given to Elizabeth. I don't know whether she can put it up now, or I'll just read it if you like. The motion is that the exhibits C, D, E, F, and G to report HK 22059 be amended to remove the words "all interior features" from under the section of non-cultural heritage attributes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to go back one step. I'm sorry, I understand we have one of the property owners wanting to speak.
For any members of the public who are with us at this time in the Zoom call, if you'd like to speak to the current file that we're discussing, if you could raise your hand in Zoom just so that we can identify you.
Okay, do we have,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Esford has raised his hand, so I'm just going to ask him to unmute.
Hello?
we're hearing you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you. May I speak?
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, my name's John S. Ford. I live at 1332 Woodbine Road, the Daniel E. Grass House. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to the committee, the volunteers, and city employees for your work preserving Kingston's heritage. And I've dealt directly with Ryan, who has been very good to work with. Just wanted to go on record that we've been requested 3 times to have our home designated, and 3 times we've declined this. We enter this very hesitantly and with reservation. And upon just witnessing an earlier application for somebody to do the roofing at 7 George Street, and that their costs have gone from $3,500 to $13,000 potentially. This concerns us and the burden that we are about to take on with this. So anyhow, I just wanted to go on record that we're moving forward, but we are hesitant about this, and hopefully looks like down the road we'll have to work with the committee, and that we can do so in a practical manner. So thank you. I just wanted to go on record for that.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us there. Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of lost us where we are on this. So with Don's comments on non-cultural heritage attributes, he wants to make an amendment. Is that, when do we discuss that, or?
Yes, he will. Well, it has not yet been moved and seconded, but once he's moved and seconded it, then it will be available for discussion.
Oh, sorry, okay, thank you. I
Okay.
forgot where we were.
Yep. Okay, are we now ready for that motion? Do we have it printed? Okay. Okay, so we need to move and second the complete notice of intention to designate, the beginning of which you've got on the screen, and then you can move your amendment to it. So this, I believe, covers all. No, this is. Can we do them all at once, or you want to do them individually? It's all one, isn't it? That's what I thought. Just going to get back to the right page. Page 7 has gone missing. There we go. Yeah. So on your page 7 of the agenda, you've got a recommendation that Heritage Kingston recommends to council, and there you have the list of the 6 buildings. And with the rules that then follow about objections, etc. So that is the motion that we need to have on the floor. A question, though, before we do that is that Don's motion does not do anything to that motion, does it? Because what he is concerned with is are the schedules. The schedules are part of that motion?
Mr. Chair, through you, once we have the amendment up, I think that will be made clear. If we can go ahead and put the motion on the floor, then we can discuss the motion to amend once it's been placed on the floor.
And that includes amending the schedules which are part of the motion. Okay,
is correct.
good. So our motion then, which includes all 6 and has the schedules attached to it, looking for a mover to put that on the floor. Moved by Don and a seconder by Jennifer. Thank you very much. So we don't need anything to vote yet. Now, any discussion on that long motion? Councillor Oosterhoff.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm still a little bit lost here because of where it fits. So maybe I didn't understand everything. So maybe I have to hear a little bit more. But why would we want to have scope creep here? I would be nervous if I was an owner now too. I think Mr. Asford has a free right to be nervous if we're going to. I think we do our jobs well with the exterior. It says elements that do not contribute to the party's cultural heritage value include its all interior features, wooden fence, and detached accessory buildings. We have to recognize that these buildings are maybe late to the game as far as designation status. And why would we now choose to increase the scope of our oversight and regulatory supervision and whatever? I don't understand that. And I would have to hear it again for the rationale before. I would just caution us that we're just going to go down a road of bumps and bruises here. This is, I feel very uncomfortable expanding our scope creep.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask Ryan, first of all, the motion itself, without the schedules, is that the standard wording that we've always used before?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the motions are our standard wording. What the confusion, I think, is that the first part of the motion is the serving of the notice intention. The second part of the motion is asking council to approve the designation after the notice of intention has proceeded through its channels. And to do that, we reference the bylaw that they are then to pass, which is the schedules that I think Member Taylor wants to amend. So it's a two-part motion for each property, which is why there's 12 parts to this motion.
Councillor Rustov?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So I still remain, I guess I'll try to understand it, but I would like to ask Heritage staff whether they support this. How would they receive this? And is it advisable that we go down this road?
Yep.
Thank you, and through you, and I guess I'm just asking the clerk if this is something we should be discussing before the amendment is on the floor. Not because I don't want to answer the question, I just don't want to disrupt the procedure.
The problem here is it's an extremely complicated motion where you've got 6 parts to it and all the schedules. Let me make this clear and publicly, are the schedules all part of the motion? In that case, the schedules can be discussed right now and can presumably be amended. They're not part 5s, are they? So they can be, the whole motion can be amended. Do you want to comment? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So what we are discussing here is, as Mr. Leary had mentioned, there are a number of recommendations and a number of exhibits. There are 2 exhibits associated with each file or each address that we're discussing today. So the first is going to be the notice that goes from the clerk once council has made its decision on the matter. And then there is also a bylaw that would be passed by council that would formally designate that property. The schedules that are being discussed are schedules to the bylaw that would be eventually passed by council should they decide that they wish to do so. So right now, the main motion is on the floor, so we are discussing all of the recommendation, all 6 properties. We have not yet placed Mr. Taylor's amendment on the floor, which was specific to the schedules. So Councillor Oosterhoff, if we could just get clarification on the scope that you're discussing. Were you speaking directly to what Mr. Taylor had previously mentioned about the inclusion of all interior attributes, or were you asking more generally?
No, thank you. Just in reference to Mr. Taylor's context, if I understood it, and so I think I haven't really read his full amendment, but I think if he's relating to non-cultural heritage attributes, this particular schedule says that the designation does not cover interior features, wooden fences, and detached accessory buildings. Is that not correct?
Yes, and there's a similar statement for, I think, for each of the other 5.
Yeah, for each of them. Yeah, so I just wanted to speak to that and hear where staff would, why are we considering that? I don't understand that. I really feel uncomfortable about this. Vision.
Okay. Okay, what we're suggesting here is that we now put Mr. Taylor's motion on the floor, and you've got it there, and we're going to put it, should be up on the screens for you. Should be up on the screens for you. There we go, good. So this relates to the Schedule A's, which are page 120 onwards in the agenda, for 4 of the properties, which in fact starts with... Oh, no it doesn't. Let's get the exact place for them. I'm trying to, oh, there's Exhibit C. They're all lettered differently. Yeah, so for C, D, E, and F, and G, as on page 126, which is the one for Exhibit C, you find that under non-cultural heritage attributes, that motion would ask to delete all interior features. Leave the previous bullet, and in each of the other cases, I think there are other bullets that will be left. Well, sorry, while you're thinking on that, Don, do you want to comment again, introduce your motion, your amendment, as to why you are making it?
Well, I spoke at some length to it. All I think I need to do is just add, well, I'm a little bit confused by some of the comments, but perhaps I can reassure Councillor Oosterhoff that my amendment has no effect on what is protected and what is not protected. The interior features are not protected. Including the phrase, all interior features under the listing of non-heritage attributes is simply making a statement, I would call it a misstatement, that the interior features have no value. And I don't think we should be sending that message to owners or to the community. But to repeat, whether my amendment is passed or not, the interior features are not protected by these bylaws. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Oosterhoff, and then Councillor Doherty.
Yes, sorry, Bridget. Yeah, okay, I guess so. I misunderstood that, and so it's not like we're going to be going through these homes. Okay, so I guess you are trying to protect the language that the interior is still valued, but not under our regulatory scope. Okay, thanks for that clarification, Don.
Doherty?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate the clarification because I had the same question, but it's a complicated question because I have an example of a beautiful house that was never designated not far from here, where the inside was totally stripped of all heritage value. And I think it's the saddest thing ever. So, but on the other hand, we try to balance also the affordability and the needs and everything of homeowners. But Mr. Taylor's clarification, I can definitely support it because we need to speak to the value of the heritage value of the interior of a property as well. But so I guess it's a question to staff is, why don't we ever, like the house that specific house that I'm thinking about, somebody even took the banister out, the beautiful wooden banister that this lovely house once had, and used it in another building that they owned, and literally stripped all the beautiful heritage value of the interior. So when can we consider interior and when can we not? And is there a way that we could manage to add a bit more balance to that instead of just simply ignoring the interior?
Question to staff?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, I mean, I think I can speak to that kind of at the higher level of, you know, what and how Part 4s are enacted within Ontario to address interior attributes. Interior attributes are a difficult thing when we do a Part 4 designation. We do see them in a limited number of cases, and that's usually when the interior aspect or attribute feature is understood and previously identified as, you know, a very important representative example that does offer a contribution to the local heritage inventory that, if lost, would be a loss of really a unique example. We do not have the opportunity to require of property owners to allow us to enter their private residences to assess interior attributes. That is one challenge. That's not spoken to in the Act. It's just the reality of how, you know, properties are assessed. We certainly have and can see when property owners do come forward, some might suggest, you know, I have a beautiful fireplace, and I would like to have that added to the attribute list. And there is an opportunity where staff have an opportunity to then put that in the designation bylaw. So, you know, importantly here is the balance between what remains within the public good and accessible for appreciation and understanding of the character of an area and of the city. And interior attributes, I think this is one of the many reasons why we don't often see them on private residences, particularly when the public will not experience those spaces. It can and often is perceived by property owners as undue hardship for them to maintain those attributes. We certainly would want them to think about how to maintain their interiors, but the opportunity then to require it under the Act is not something that is as easily pursued. Again, we have no right to enter a private residence and to assess the features therein under the Act.
Thank you for that. And so did we enter any of the 6 properties that we looked at, or did any of the owners come forward with specific examples of what they would like to protect interior as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was invited into the Mahood House on Johnson Street, but it was certainly not to be evaluating attributes. None of the owners came forward with suggestions, so that's why they weren't included.
And if it's Mr. Taylor's amendment, just want to hear from staff. I understand it doesn't give the Heritage Committee, you know, any more, say, internal attributes, but will it be helpful to, I can see right now it's, the way Mr. Taylor explained it, it's more of an optics, but is there also another advantage, like could the interior be at least somewhat discussed during heritage deliberations?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking to this at the higher level, and I think what Mr. Taylor has proposed, the reason why staff initially considered including this all interior features comment is to assure the property owners that their interior features were not included in the attributes list. This is really about assuring them that they can make alterations to their interior, and hopefully the ones that they would make would consider those heritage components, but that it would not require a permit approval through the designation bylaw. That being said, staff and myself and Ryan have had some discussion about this. We don't necessarily oppose Mr. Taylor's proposal, but I think it's really about clearly messaging then to property owners that things that are not listed in the bylaw in the interior spaces are not included or required to seek heritage approval unless they impact attributes or that outside experience. So we're certainly aware of what we think Mr. Taylor is trying to bring forward here. At the end of the day, I don't think it changes very much about how the properties will be considered. And any future opportunity to designate or add an attribute from the interior space would require an amendment to the bylaw and would come back through committee and then to council for consideration anyway. So this doesn't really change anything about the future approval, but we do appreciate what Mr. Taylor is trying to do with the messaging. What staff were trying to do with the messaging was to assure the potential designated property owners about the scope of the permit requirements. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. So we are presently looking at a motion to amend in the schedules. Further questions, comments, Jane?
Yes, I seconded this amendment because I think it's the messaging. It's not about having any circumspection over the interior of anyone's property, but it's the way it's worded. It's not a heritage attribute. And I don't have the wording in front of me either, but I think we have to be careful about giving the wrong message that you shouldn't value, there's no heritage value to your interior, because there is, but that's up to you.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers on the amendment? Yep.
Yeah, I like as a designer, I appreciate, and I'm sure a homeowner appreciate having all interior features just specifically set out. Sorry. As a designer or as an architect, I appreciate having all interior features set out as it being very clear, like what is and isn't included in the designation. I think it's the wording, non-cultural heritage attributes, maybe something instead, just for further, like at another time, like not included in designation, or something that like basically just doesn't say, yeah, that it has no heritage value, but.
Further comments? Okay, looking then, can we get the motion back on the screen? The motion to amend that Exhibit C, D, E, F, and G to Report HK 22059 be amended in Schedule A to delete the words "all interior features" from under the section Non-Cultural Heritage Attributes. Those voting in favor of that amendment? Those voting against that amendment? And that carries. So that clause is deleted from the 5 schedules. We now go back to the main motion. Yeah. No, she didn't move. And I didn't hear from anybody who may be online. So the main motion starts on page 6. Notice of intention to designate under the Ontario Heritage Act. It recommends that we recommend to council that those 6, I've forgotten the number, 6 properties B, the process start to designate, and it includes schedules which give you reasons for that designation. Discussion on that. Oh, do we have that moved yet? Yes, we do. Discussion on the motion to start the designation forward. Yes, Paul.
Question to staff regarding the property that you've had absolutely no response to, and I understand you can still move forward, but down the line, could this be a problem? I mean, if someone suddenly does come forward and, I don't know what they would say, but people being people, and I'm sure they'll say something. And what sort of issues might arise? As far as, you've gone through the process from your end, as you should, but could there be roadblocks down the...
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think once the appeal period is passed, there is no opportunity for them to formally object. So that's the legality of it all. But I think part of our job is the education part and the stewardship discussions with the owners to reassure them that we're not as scary as we seem and the process is not as daunting as it may sound. I mean, we have owners right now that have been on the register for 20 years that didn't know it, and we've had to call them out when they've applied for a building permit, and that's when the discussion starts. That's, I think, part of the nature of and rationale for having the Heritage Resource Center downstairs, to invite people in, sit down, talk to them about what it means to be designated, and help them through their misconceptions and their apprehensions. And I think that's a big part of our job. So unfortunately, we weren't able to connect with the owner at this particular property. Owners or correspondence we sent them, we know they got. They were done by registered mail in some cases, so they never came back. None of the letters have been bounced back to us. So we know they are aware of it. And some choose just not to be a party to it. They've just agreed to let it proceed and that's pretty common, actually. So I think we've done our best, and I think we'll hope to reach out to these folks down in the future and try to build some relationships.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to think where we were. Did we vote yet? No, that was you. You were asking the question on the vote. Sorry, I was listening for the answer so carefully. Other questions, other comments on the motion, which recommend... Yes, Don.
Well, just feel I should make a comment which is partly in reply to one of the owners. I'm afraid I didn't catch his name. There is certainly a misconception, or at least a feeling among owners that having your property designated means things are going to get much more expensive, repairs are going to be much more expensive. And that is sometimes true, but it's not necessarily true at all. Quite often, committee members say, no, you don't have to replace that door, it can be repaired. No, you don't have to, that wall with fancy paint and so on. And in cases where we do, where there are more expensive requirements, you're really adding value to the property. In the long run, that benefits the owners as well as others. So, I just felt that comment should be recorded somewhere. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Otherwise, then the motion to recommend to council to proceed with the designation of those 6 properties. Those in favour? And I've got a majority of 6 there. Those opposed? Okay, so that will be approved, and that will go on to council. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, staff, for all the work that goes into those and into answering our difficult questions, etc. Okay, that brings us down to the working group reports, and I don't believe there are any at this point. Emergency approvals. You have there Sydenham Street with a leaking roof, and Montreal Street with the need to install video recording. Any particular comments? Phil, you want to comment on those?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So let's start with the one at 610 Montreal. So this was a prominent property at that intersection, and we have people who are now working there, and they felt unsafe based on some of their experiences and the fact that they aren't able to see who's at the door. And so there was we approved the installation of lighting equipment and video equipment for the long-term use of that property. So that's that one. The second one is 123 Sydenham, which is a major roof reconstruction on the northwestern part of the property. They have active leaks. They've had active leaks for years, and they've been patching it, except this time it's gotten so much that it's caused serious issues, and they've come in and showed us pictures of the internal damage. And based on that, we have approved an emergency approval to address those immediate concerns. However, we also have a current application that is being commented and looked upon by committee and being reviewed by staff that is addressing other parts of the roof proposal that is not related to the active leaking. So that is what both of those proposals are for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I know there are no motions. Any notices of motion? One item which I apologize, I forgot I wanted to add under other business, and staff know this. At our last meeting, we asked, after the discussion on solar panels in Berryfield, for a report on how council is dealt with this. And in fact, it was a complicated discussion, so I'd now like to ask for, at a future meeting, how does council deal when their new objectives have overridden and are different from a conservation district heritage plan? And that was the situation we got ourselves caught in, and it's not an easy one to do, but if sometime in the next couple of months you could come up with some suggestions there, it would be much appreciated. Correspondence you have from the Ontario Heritage Trust, and you have the letter from the Pratts that we heard of. And please, the next meeting is not the third Wednesday. Everybody looked at their agendas. See, I missed that bit as well. Thank you for pointing out that because of the election, it's been delayed until October 26, which is the fourth Wednesday. So if I come here on the third Wednesday and find you all here, I'll know how many are listening. Anything we've omitted? Okay, at 11:28 or so, thank you all very much. Looking for a mover to adjourn. Jane? Excellent. Thank you very, very much indeed. We got through our new setting again.